You're hearing the Frank Beckmann Show. News Talk 760 WJR.
Congress back in session, a busy week coming up here in Washington, and at the center of the discussion, two big issues: gun control, number one, and number two, illegal immigration. And yes, we're not going to play the politically correct game about undocumented aliens and all of that. It's illegal immigration. Congresswoman Candice Miller from Macomb County has been at the heart of that discussion all along and has continually emphasized that any changes have to include some sort of way to secure our borders. And Congresswoman Miller's on the other end of our line this morning. How are you?
Hey, wonderful, Frank. Really good to join with you.
Good of you to come back on. Now, as this conversation continues over immigration and a so-called path to citizenship and allowing illegals to stay here, you're still concerned about the borders. What are you hearing from leadership in the House, and what are you hearing from the other chamber in the Senate about including that as a part of any legislation that'll be discussed?
Well, as you well put out here, you've got two different kinds of proposals that are going to come out almost imminently now, as we understand it. One in the Senate from their Gang of Eight, a bipartisan group working on immigration reform. We have a similar group over in the House working on, again, bipartisan, working on immigration reform. Everybody's very interested in hearing what they have to say. I have a very open mind on what they have to say, but I'll tell you one part of it that I think is absolutely critical, as you point out. I think in order to have comprehensive immigration reform, we must have, the American people must have a very high degree of confidence, a comfort level that we are securing our borders or are moving very quickly towards securing our borders. Otherwise, hey, Frank, we are just going to have this conversation next year, the year after, 10 years later. I mean, it's never going to end. So subsequently, the chairman of the Homeland Security Committee in the House, Mike McCall, and myself, I'm the vice chair, and then we have John Cornyn, who's a senator from Texas, who's introduced a companion bill to us. We've introduced this bill that requires that we have operational control of our borders, which is something that the Department of Homeland Security, Secretary Napolitano, has said that they don't like the term operational control. They say it's antiquated, but their term, which they call a Border Control Index, BCI, was supposed to come out in the last 2 years. They still haven't come out with it. Now they say they don't really like that term either. So we've introduced this bill saying, look, we've got a specific timeline on when various things have to be done, when they have to be verified by an outside agency, actually, an outside group, I should say, independent, so that we, trust but verify. Not just somebody saying the borders are more secure now than they ever have been, and yet, based on what? Based on what? You have to have a measurable matrix in which that you can really verify that our borders are under operational control, and so that's what our bill is about.
Well, the last time we passed a major immigration bill was nearly 30 years ago, the Immigration Reform and Control Act back in '86, which was signed by President Reagan at the time, and that was going to solve this problem. If for those who may not remember, 3 million illegals at the time were given legal status. The law criminalized the act of knowingly hiring an illegal and was supposedly going to close off the borders. And look what's happened. We've got, 12 to 20 million illegals who have come into the U.S. since then and are now here, and we're having the same discussion.
Well, first I would say this. We've actually had a study from the GAO which looked at the various borders. We all focus on the southern border. We actually have more than one border. We have the northern border. We have the maritime environment, obviously our coastal borders. But that study showed us that they had about 44% of operational control at the southern border, very small percentage in the single-digit numerals on the northern border of operational control. And that is when we all start arguing about this term, operational control. Well, you have to have some type of measurement on where you actually are, and so that you can't just say, look, we're now, apprehending X amount of people that are coming across the border, illegal crossers, and interdicting so many drugs. Therefore, the borders are so secure. Well, you're not really measuring how many you're missing. And so our bill is requiring them to develop a strategy within 120 days. But, I will say this. There has been quite a bit done at the border, but it's sort of been an ad hoc throw all the resources you can at it. In other words, we've put a lot of boots on the ground with all the agents that are now down there, which is a huge ratchet up, really, of the amount of personnel that we have there. We've been using technology and effectively with the UAVs, the unmanned aerial vehicles that are now patrolling the border. That has really been a huge force multiplier. We have fencing in strategic areas, about 700 miles of fence. So it's and the border is not always static. In other words, you might secure a particular segment of the border. 6 months later, it's a dynamic thing. The thing maybe has changed a bit, and maybe you've got some other kind of situation. So you really need to continue to address and measure how much operational control you have at the border. And anyway, I think our bill is a great way to do this. We've already had excellent response from at least the leadership in the House. I talked to Cornyn last night. The Senate, they're looking at it pretty closely. And, there are some people who say, look, the border is secured, as secure as it's ever been. We don't have to think so much about securing the border as we move forward in this whole debate.
We're talking with Congresswoman Candice Miller, a strong advocate for securing America's borders as part of the immigration changes that we're going to make in law here in the United States. I'd like to talk about how the government has become almost complicit in the number of illegals who are coming here. We've set up programs along with the Mexican government to inform people down there how to get stamps and other benefits once they come to the U.S. It's almost like we've been encouraging them to come. And this has led many to suggest that we're really promoting a culture of undocumented Democrats to come here. Do you buy that? Do you think this is political in trying to build a voting bloc by Democrats?
Well, I don't know about that. I will say, look, this administration, I believe, needs to have a measurable way to achieve operational control at the border. But I must also say that the last administration wasn't particularly very good at this either. So, no one really has clean hands on this. As you say, since '86, we've watched this thing happen. It didn't just happen overnight. And look, we can all go into various industries all across the country and see what's happening here. We say that these people are in the shadows. Well, look, if you've got 11 to 15 million, however many illegal aliens that are in the country right now, they're not all in the shadows. And so we know, I think most Americans know, look, we have got to get this situation resolved. I think there's a lot of economic plus sides for the country if you have the ability to document folks, get them paying taxes, et cetera. And, America is a country of, as we all say, we're a nation of immigrants. We are also a nation of laws. And so, this is a very emotional issue, and I will be very interested to see what both the Senate and the House come forward with. And as I say, I'm going to keep an open mind about the whole thing. I know that something has to be done, but I will also tell you, for me, and I believe many, if you don't have secure borders or feel that we are moving very quickly towards securing the borders, and we can secure the borders, I believe, then I think we are going to have a hard time getting to a majority in either the House or the Senate for any kind of immigration bill. And I just think securing these borders is a critical piece of this entire debate.
Otherwise, you wind up with what we had 27 years ago, where you give amnesty to the people who are already here in one form or another. It's amnesty. And you've got a whole flood of new illegals coming across the border and going, hey, look what happened. We'll just go, and eventually they'll forgive us, and you encourage that kind of behavior again.
We've had testimony now where not so much Mexicans really anymore. First of all, many Mexicans are their economy is not so bad, and ours has not been so great. There's been a bit of that. It hasn't just been because the administration has clamped down.
Yeah, we got Hondurans, Guatemalans.
That's what's happening, and because you've got these drug cartels along huge parts of the border, where you could, an argument can be made. You're practically in a war zone down there now with these drug cartels. Many people are afraid to try to cross that border now. And the drug cartels are reaching further down into the centrals, into these villages, these poor villages, et cetera, trying to get folks to be mules to take the drugs across, et cetera. I mean, So I say, next year it'll be a different conversation. But, one other thing, not only just the borders, we're also working on visas, because here's the thing. In the 40%, almost 50%, at least 40-some% of everyone who is here in our country illegally, Frank, didn't come across the desert through the, through the southern border. They are here on visa overstays. So you say, well, look, we don't have to worry. We're in the middle of the country, so we're not, some state, we're in the middle of the country. We're not a border state. Well, guess what? If you have an international airport, you are a border state. Look, we can remember that, I think 4 of the 9/11 hijackers were here on visa overstays.
Well, exactly, and the final point is simply, if you're willing to ignore the basic laws of the United States and come here illegally, why should we expect that you will honor our laws once you live here and live by them? There's no evidence you're going to do that. We've got to run. Keep up the good fight, and I know you'll stand firm on this issue of securing the borders as a part of any package, Congresswoman Miller.